Yes,
Hey,
I'm
thanks.
now recording. Yeah. Welcome, everybody. We're just going to wait for people to join in. We'll get started in a couple minutes. Thanks for tuning in.
Does anybody else feel like they've got intense stage lighting right in their face?
Oh, I definitely do.
Me too.
Yeah, there's 4 lights shining on me right here. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Yeah.
Don't melt.
Oh, I see more people coming in. We're going to wait a couple more minutes before we get started. Cool.
Someone put on the chat that they can't hear anything.
They can't hear anything. I'm not sure what that means. Oh, Shu, you're not hearing anything. Hi, Shu, all the way from Alaska.
Hey, Shu. Maybe that's why you can't hear. You're too far away.
Yeah, you're so far away. So other people are hearing Shu. I think it might be on your end somehow. Not sure exactly. I hope we can figure it out.
It's being recorded anyway, so you can always watch it later, but
That's true. All right, we'll wait one more minute and then we'll get started.
and by the way, while all the other panelists are going, I'm probably going to turn off this stage lighting, so I'm going to look like Darth Vader for most of the thing, and then when it's my turn, I'll turn the light back on again.
Okay, this is so great. So many people from all over the place tuning in. It's awesome.
Who's the farthest away one? Maybe Frank Murphy down in Tahiti?
Maybe. Yeah. We'll see. We're going to ask people to share, so they'll share their location too. So that'll be fun. All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Welcome, everybody. I'm Chris Lay. I'm the Administrative Director of the Norris Center. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're really excited to broadcast to you live from the Norris Center on the very quiet UC Santa Cruz campus. This webinar is a new context for us, and we're definitely learning a lot as we do this. And while we really miss being able to gather in person, this format is allowing so many of you to zoom in from afar. And I'm just really excited to interact with folks. I know, maybe Alaska's the farthest away, who knows, but you can jump into the chat. How far away are you? So this is really great. I'm excited to have all of you here. As many of you know, the Norris Center supports natural history education and research opportunities for students, for faculty, for the greater Santa Cruz community. And following in the spirit of UCSC Professor Ken Norris, we're committed to being a community hub for all of us that love the natural world. And especially in challenging times like these, we need to seek each other out as well as seek out the nature around us wherever we are sheltering. So before we begin tonight, I want to thank our production team. Our Assistant Director, Alex Crone, our student curators, Emily Scott, Veronica Ness, and Frankie Hernandez, all of which are going to help co-host this event. So you'll see them later. And we're also excited to have four presentation teams here tonight. First, we have Sarah Rabkin, who will read from a new UC Santa Cruz oral history book. Zika Glucks from the Predatory Bird Research Group and her student research team, Noe, Hannah, and Linnea, who are here to tell you about a raptor survey project they're working on down in Watsonville. Camille Hartley, past teaching assistant of the Natural History Field Quarter class and amazing nature-inspired musician, will be here to share some new songs she's just written. And then finally, Joe Jordan, our local astronomer, who will tell us about Venus, which will be visible right after this symposium in our western sky. And we're going to encourage everyone right afterwards to go check it out. We'll have a quick wrap up at the end. We'll try to get this in an hour, and we'll encourage all of you to give us some feedback afterwards. We'll email the feedback form out and put it on our Facebook page, put it on our website so that you can give us some feedback. As I said, this is a totally new format and we really want to get your feedback. We're really excited to be able to do this. Many of you have used Zoom before. I want to give you some Zoom logistics. Many of you might, this is different for some of you perhaps. This is not a meeting, this is a webinar. And you are an attendee. And there are basically two ways that you can interact with us. You can type a message into the chat, or you can ask a question. Sorry, you can't raise your hand. We disabled that feature because that was just too complicated for us Zoom novices here. So for the Predatory Bird Research group presentation and for Joe Jordan, you're welcome to ask some questions. And if there's time, we'll try to get to some of those questions. But right now, we're going to ask you to use the chat feature. So interspersed between our presenters, we want to hear from you. And there are a number of you out there. And we're asking you to share with us briefly some observations or appreciations you have for the natural world. And I have a little slide I'm going to share here. So what we'd like to ask everyone to do just for a couple minutes here is to take a moment and reflect on an interesting nature observation or experience you've had during this sheltering time, or an appreciation you have for the natural world. And write it down and share it with us via the Zoom chat feature. And do this, include your first name if you will, or if you don't want to share your name, that's fine, you can just write anonymous. Share your location. I'm very curious to know where people are zooming in for this program. And then just write a 1 to 2 sentence appreciation or observation of the natural world you have. And what we're going to do is we're going to take them all really quickly and share out some of them interspersed through the next hour. We may not get to everyone's, and what we decided we would do is put them all on one document and email them to everybody at the end, or afterwards. So take a moment, I'll be quiet, take some time to reflect on some interesting observation you've made or an appreciation you have for the natural world. Okay, I'll give you 1 more minute. 30 seconds. Okay. So thanks for sharing, and we'll race around and try to get that organized, and we'll share out some of them to everybody throughout the presentation. Right now, I want to introduce our first presenter, Sarah Rabkin. Sarah's an avid nature writer and journaler, and she's going to read to us about Ken Norris and the early UCSC natural history community from a newly published oral history book about our campus. Please welcome Sarah.
Thank you, Chris. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm going to be reading, as Chris said, some brief stories about Ken Norris and some of his brainchildren, the Natural History Field Quarter, the UC Natural Reserve System, and an early UCSC initiative some of you may remember called the Environmental Field Program. And these, along with countless other stories, can be found in this new book, which I will attempt to show you here. This is a front cover, photographed by Ansel Adams. And some of you may recognize the back cover image of that slug weather vane. So this book is called Seeds of Something Different, An Oral History of the University of California, Santa Cruz. It just came out in March, and I co-edited it with two colleagues, both also UCSC alumni. Irene Reddy, who's the director of the UCSC Library's Regional History Project, and Cameron Vanderskoff, a professional oral historian who's now living in New York City. The book is 2 volumes, 900 pages. It's illustrated with 250 photographs, posters, and other images from UCSC Library archives. And it presents the history of the campus in the form of a conversation among 200 different people from across more than 50 years of UCSC history. So it's really like nothing else that's ever been out there. The book's been selling like crazy, despite the fact that it came out just as COVID-19 was closing in on us. We have just about sold out of our first printing. Fortunately, we have a new one coming in. If you're interested in obtaining the book, you can order it online in hard copy through the Bay Tree Bookstore or Bookshop Santa Cruz, or in ebook form by way of Amazon. And there are links to all that information on the Norris Center website. Thanks to Alex. So as I read these excerpts from the book that have to do with Ken Norris and natural history at UCSC, you may recognize the names of some of the speakers in this excerpt from the book, but you may know these folks in their more recent roles. For example, Jenny Keller, who has for many years taught in and helped oversee the graduate program in science illustration, now at CSU Monterey Bay, and who some of you know from UCSC. She's identified here as a student, which she was here at UC Santa Cruz during the time that's touched on in the story that she shares. So I'll begin the excerpt with a brief comment from Jim Pepper, who is an early and longtime professor in UCSC's Environmental Studies Department, who said, "The important early figures here would surely have to include Ken Norris, who brought natural history back to Santa Cruz." Shannon Brownlee, student. One of the reasons that Ken and I had this special relationship is he had the same sort of dichotomy in himself, where he was an artist at heart, but he had to decide on art or science. We talked about that a lot, that the fact that we looked at the world with an artist's eye had a great deal to do with being able to observe. Ken and I were able to stand in a boat and identify whales and dolphins from an incredible distance. We both saw the animal as a gestalt, and could tell by just the movement and the blow and a little bit of fin which animal it was. I think it was the artist's eye, because you had to be able to observe it that way to draw an animal. The silliness and the play and the practical jokes and the incredibly outrageous stories that Ken used to tell were all part of his genius. He had a mind that could range anywhere. It was extraordinary to be in his presence. It made you more confident of your wacky ideas because you never knew when a wacky idea would be the right one. Who would think that dolphins hear through their jaws? Who would think that a spermaceti organ in a sperm whale was partly for amplifying sound to blast away at giant squid? I mean, who would think of any of this? There were just no boundaries to Ken's thinking. The natural world was so astonishing that why should you limit the way you think about things according to some sort of standard human way of classification? All kinds of things are possible. This is what all scientific breakthrough is made out of, is that somebody thought the unthinkable. Ken was thinking the unthinkable all the time. Ken Norris. I conjured up this notion of us getting vans and loading them with our food and so forth, and off we went with the natural history field quarter students. We could stop on the way and look at the plants we found, or the geology, or whatever else it was, and then we could move on. Our little moving community across the state became an organism. And it was terribly different than teaching in a laboratory or a lecture hall on campus, where you're propped up in front of the students and the students are taking down your every golden word. In this case, you're living your life with them in a very real way. We divided up who would cook, who would wash dishes, and all that sort of stuff. We ate each other's dreadful food. We wove ourselves into each other's lives. Jenny Keller, student. We were in the Mojave Natural History Field Quarter with Ken. We were heading out to the Kelso Dunes, which we used to do way before sunrise. Sun hadn't even come up yet. All of a sudden, there was this explosion of activity. About a dozen of us are running through the scrub, dodging this way and that. And then I see Ken Norris at the head of the pack, who dives headfirst into the sand. He comes up with a scoop of sand and a lizard and proceeds to hold it, carefully of course, by one leg. And we all crowd around to look at it. It was a leopard lizard, which has beautiful airbrushed spots and patterns on it and kind of a pale beige background color. And right on the spot, Ken started making up this theory about why this lizard would have the pattern that it does. He was gesturing toward the bushes and saying, "See how the wind has blown the sand and how it exposes some dark and light patterns, just like these patches?" We responded, "Oh my gosh, you're right, look at that. That would be perfect camouflage." We were immediately on board with his hypothesis and totally enchanted. He was continuing to examine the lizard and point things out to us. And he goes, "Oh, but look here." And he pointed out something that really seemed to throw his theory into question, you know, kind of throw it out of the water. At that moment, I happened to be standing on the periphery of the group that were crowding around Ken. I had this very beautiful experience of not only being a part of what was going on, but watching it happen. When he said that, there was a collective murmur. There was this sigh of disappointment that rose from the group and these voices that were expressing support for his original idea. I thought, oh my gosh, look at us. We don't want to hear it. We are so attached to the first good idea that we're pushing away the next piece of information that the lizard is telling us. Our minds were getting clouded by our preconceived ideas. Never mind that this theory was 30 seconds old. Fortunately for us, Ken was not stuck on that idea, and he proceeded in that moment to make up an equally magnificent and plausible theory of how the lizard got its spots. And then we were off. I thought, oh, I get it. You're saying, check it out. Don't stop checking it out. Keep looking at the real thing. Don't stop going to the source. And for me, that has become such a touchstone because I believe it's crucially important to good science to keep asking those questions. And it turns out it's equally important for science illustration. You have to keep looking at the real thing or you'll start making it up or drawing what you think a leaf looks like or a lizard looks like or a fox's ears. Are they triangles? Well, no, sort of, but if you just put a triangle on top of that head, it's not going to look like a fox's ears. It was that moment when I thought, oh, he's not teaching us about the lizard. He is showing us about the lizard, but he's demonstrating how not to get stuck, how to keep your mind open and your observation open. It's how Ken was. He was giving that to us all the time. You ask your questions, you play them out, you let them fly, see if there's something worth pursuing or something worth discarding or something worth picking up later. You're never done. Spinning the wheel, that's what he called it. Larry Ford, student. The environmental field program was essential to Ken's whole teaching philosophy, which was that students needed the opportunity to test their wings. They needed to learn how to complete an entire professional project. So he found a way to give them some money to support themselves for maybe a quarter, which is not an unreasonable amount of time to do a project. Ken. The environmental field program put students in teams on issue areas throughout wild California. We built a collapsible house out of plywood that we could bolt together. We put it on a flat truck and drove it wherever we wanted to and set it up. It had a little bunk room, a dark room, and a place where you could cook. We built it here at the Norris home in Bonnie Doon in the backyard. It was about 40 feet long and it had little rooms in it. It was tight going for people who stayed in it. We would identify an issue area and we'd take this thing out and set it up and then attack the issue. For example, one of the sites was in the Kingston Range in the desert south of Death Valley. We thought it ought to be a wilderness area. They're big, high mountains, over 7,000 feet. We put our team out there to study this, and they ended up doing an elegant report. They discovered 26 new Indian sites while they worked out there. They mapped the geology. They did all kinds of stuff like that. By golly, we got the thing in as a wilderness area. That was a successful one. Roger Samuelson, director of the UC Natural Reserve System. Ken Norris put the blueprint together for the whole natural reserve system for the University of California. He was one of these amazing people who not only had a vision or a dream, but also had an action plan to carry it out. He had an ability to push with a big smile and an aw shucks attitude that was awfully hard to turn down. Ken believed that we couldn't just acquire lands and mothball them, that it wasn't our purpose to simply hold the reserves under the auspices of the University of California. These were sites that had to be developed and maintained and used as outdoor laboratories. Ken. I toured the state from top to bottom, inspected nearly 90 sites, hiked shorelines, mountains, grasslands, and deserts, and emerged from it not only with a firm grasp of what is needed, but also with a reaffirmation of the magnificence of our opportunity and the importance of rapid action. Time is short. Habitat destruction is appalling and everywhere evident. Although some habitats are gone, we are generally in time. Don Usner, student. We were at Big Creek Reserve on the Natural History Field Quarter. We were hiking out on our last day. It was day 5, and we were coming down a big, beautiful, grassy ridge with the ocean down below us. We were all high on the place. Ken, as usual, took time to walk with me. He'd do that. He'd take individuals and take time and be with them. I was walking with him down the ridge that day and I was telling him I was so overwhelmed with how beautiful this place was. I was just stunned. We had a conversation during which he said they had just bought it from the Nature Conservancy and it was going to be under university control in the Natural Reserve System. I graduated not long after that in 1981. I was caretaker at Big Creek. Big Creek was the dream of an entire lifetime. Roger Samuelson again. The natural reserve system is going to become more valued and more appreciated with every passing day. People are going to look back and say, wow, see what Ken Norris did, how farsighted he was, what a visionary he was. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. That was great. I'm gonna share a few nature notes that we've accumulated in the chat, and then we'll move on to our next presenter. The first nature note comes from Joel and Keon Schulman in Malibu. They say that this is snake mating season in the Santa Monica Mountains. We shooed a big garter snake away from the middle of the road a couple of days ago, the first snake of the season. Brooke in Hopland, California says, my yard bird list has almost doubled due to me being home 24/7 this spring. David Weckler from Mill Valley in Marin County, just north of San Francisco. I live surrounded by the redwoods in a lovely garden, and red-shouldered hawks have always been here, but they've always flown and cried well above the tops of the redwoods. With so little activity in the neighborhood, they are now down here with the crows and the humans, swooping low over my deck. Birds seem much more happy to come close. Vicki Pierce from Pacific Grove across from Hopkins Marine Station. Watching a pack of pair of black oyster catchers working on the nest site they've occupied for at least the last 6 years. Seems so normal. That was great. So now I'd like to welcome in the Predatory Bird Research Group. The Predatory Bird Research Group is a nonprofit founded at UC Santa Cruz in 1975 to help save the peregrine falcon from extinction. Thanks in part to their effort, as of 1999, the peregrine falcon was removed from the federal endangered species list. Today, they work on a variety of raptor research and conservation projects, including raptor-mediated rodent control and monitoring, the current breeding population of peregrine falcons in the greater San Francisco Bay Area. Let's all welcome the Predatory Bird Research Group, who will present on their work using raptors for rodent control on the Pajaro River levee.
So, hello y'all. My name is Noé. I will be presenting today with my coworkers Linnea and Hannah, the Raptors on the River, Pajaro River Levee pilot study. So a quick project overview. The project aims to demonstrate the efficiency of raptors as a biological control on rodents and rodent damage on the Pajaro River levee system. The presentation today, we're going to cover the Pajaro River and the levee system itself, rodent damage and management practices, ecological implications of rodent control that the locals in the area have been employing, as well as raptor recruitment and experimental design. So the Pajaro River levee system is the site of our study, and it essentially, the levee itself protects the farm and residential land from potential flooding. In this picture, the riparian habitat ribbon is where the levee system is. The northern portion in the Santa Cruz County is where we are working, and then the southern part of the river and levee belongs to the Monterey County.
A major problem that we experience on the Pajaro levee is that burrowing rodents can damage the levees through tunneling and increase the risk of catastrophic flooding. And so what this involves is that problem species like ground squirrels and pocket gophers can tunnel all the way through the width of the levee, and this can really weaken the levee and allow water to flow through, which increases the risk of floods. So the current management of rodents at the levee is that we use carbon dioxide injection. And what this involves is injecting carbon dioxide down into the burrows, which kills any animal that's inside the burrows. And the problems with this method is that it kills many non-target species that are in the burrows, like reptiles and amphibians. And it is quite costly and has to be redone every year, so it doesn't ultimately fix the problem. And in addition to the carbon dioxide injection, the land around the levee is a lot of farmland. So the farmers often use rodenticide bait station on the farmland around the levee. And this is an issue because poisoned rodents can return to the wild. And then when predators eat those rodents, the rodenticide can work its way up the food chain to larger predators such as raptors. So our solution to this is to recruit raptors to the levee. Raptors are nature's rodent control. And so with our one-year pilot program, we are working to investigate the effectiveness of recruiting native hawks and owls to supplement current raptor-friendly pest management activities on the Pajaro River levees. And the way that we're attracting the raptors to hunt on the levees is by installing 6 raptor perches, as you can see on the left, and 6 owl boxes, as you can see on the right. This is a map of our study area. So we are working on a 5-mile stretch of the levee on the Santa Cruz County side. And the red area of the levee shows our control area. So in this area, only the carbon dioxide injection occurs. And on the green side of the levee, that's a 2.5-mile stretch where we've set up the 6 owl boxes and 6 raptor perches. And the yellow dots represent the perches and the green dots represent the owl boxes.
So throughout this quarter, our team has been conducting surveys along the levee using a GIS mapping system. And through conducting raptor counts, pellet collection, and active rodent burrow counts, our team can compare the two zones to determine the effectiveness of our study. In this map, you can see the observed active rodent burrows marked in the orange dots. There's a lot. These data points were collected throughout the month of January and will be compared to data points we will collect later this year. And in this map, it shows the raptors we've observed so far in our study. As you can see, there seems to be a lot of red tail activity based on all those pink dots. And this is a really good sign because red tails love to eat ground squirrels. So one great thing about raptors is it's not that hard to find out what they're eating, since all raptors, not just owls, produce pellets. For the fall quarter portion of this study, we'll be focusing on determining through pellet analysis what the recruited raptors have been subsisting on. Specifically, we're looking for any signs of our target species, such as pocket gophers and ground squirrels in remains. As well as this, any fresh pellets collected will be sent off for a toxicology report to see if any trace amounts of rodenticide can be found. This will give us a better understanding of what is being transferred into our ecosystem. As we wrap this up, I'd like to thank all our collaborators and sponsors who made this study possible. And with that, we'll be answering some of your questions from the Q&A.
So one question we have from Jan is that are area landowners and farmers near the Pajaro River generally supportive of this type of research?
I can answer that question. Hi, I'm Zika. So we've been in touch with a few of the landowners. Everyone we've spoken with has been relatively supportive of the project. That being said, it is a publicly accessible area. We have experienced some vandalism to the structures, but luckily so far it's just been sort of one-off events, and most of those structures are still standing. So we hope to be able to do outreach with more neighbors of the levee very soon.
Do you have time for another question? So we have a question from Ingrid Parker. How do you quantify the density of burrows and rodent activity?
Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Zika.
Hannah, would you like to take a stab at that one since you've done a rodent survey?
Yeah, sure. So earlier in January, a group of us all went out quite a few times, and we had to walk along the levee shelf and slope and pretty much mark every active rodent burrow we came across. And that was what was uploaded into the map you guys all saw previously. And then we're hoping to do another walkthrough count of all the active rodent burrows and just see if there's any difference, either by comparing our previous data and also comparing the control portion of our study.
Maybe one more quick question, Linnea. You've got one?
One more question. There was a stretch of river without any marked dens. What's preventing them from burrowing there?
So Hannah, unless you want to answer that one.
Yeah, I can answer that. I'm pretty sure that was just a portion of the levee shelf that was just inaccessible to really traverse. It was very rocky, and I don't think there was much burrowing going on, but it wasn't really easy for us to make any data points.
Yeah, I would agree with that answer. Basically, there's some areas where they've added a lot of rocks to prevent flooding. They're very steep areas, and it's very difficult to identify burrows in that substrate. So we've passed on it for this year. Great question. All right. I think with that, we'll pass it back on to you guys. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, predatory bird researchers. I'm going to read a few more nature notes that popped up, starting with Kim from Santa Cruz. I find myself noticing bird song so much more than I used to. Irene from Santa Cruz. I appreciated watching and photographing cormorants nesting near Natural Bridges State Park. From Ginny in Kenwood, California. Just a few minutes ago, I observed an enormous bird in our tall laurel trees. I wasn't able to identify it, but it was big. I just loved all the wildlife around here. And Madeline in Big Trees State Park. While walking a fire road today, I saw a bobcat about 20 feet up a ponderosa pine being bombed by a Steller's jay. Wonderful. Thanks to all who sent those. Next, we have some music, but first I'm going to make a quick announcement about a new natural history art resource created by Emily Underwood. For those of you who don't know her, Emily is an amazing artist who teaches natural history illustration at the Norris Center. And in lieu of holding our quarterly art workshops, she's published 2 videos, which give an intro to nature journaling and illustration. So I can post the link in the chat in a few minutes. So shout out and thank you to Emily for creating those awesome resources. And now we're going to hear some fiddle tunes written and played by Camille Cheetah Hartley. Some of you know her, but Camille is a UCSC and Natural History Field Quarter alum. She's a natural history interpreter and a talented musician. And for the past year, she's dedicated herself to music, touring up and down the West Coast and working on her first album, which is very impressive. And I'm very excited to hear the album when it comes out. And last spring, Camille served as a TA on Field Quarter, and normally she would be teaching Field Quarter right now as well. And I feel very lucky because I was able to have Camille as a TA last year for Field Quarter, and one of my favorite memories was hearing her fiddling throughout California's natural spaces. And I haven't heard her play for a while, so I'm excited to hear from her. Thanks for being here, Camille, and I'm turning it over to you.
Hold on. We can't hear you, Camille. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm hearing you now.
Okay, cool. I'm talking into my fiddle mic, so I'm gonna keep it short. But I have been writing a bunch of fiddle tunes in this quarantine, and I'm gonna play one that is a waltz that I named Sun Ring Waltz after this quarantine. That's been feeling really good to play and just makes me feel really excited to play music with people again. And after I play it, I'm gonna include a little link to a Bandcamp. I made a little recording of it that you're all free to check out and download and listen to. And also on that Bandcamp is an album called Chasing Spring that's just a bunch of tiny field recordings from Field Quarter last year. So if you feel like listening to some songs I wrote on Field Quarter, they're like the most janky iPhone birds singing in the background recording, but they're pretty special too. So here's Sun Ring Waltz. Thank you. Passing it to the next person.
Excellent performance, Camille. That was wonderful. I'm going to share some more nature notes for you guys. So this is from Emily Barnett, currently in Shaver Lake. I've been lucky enough to continue working during this time as a field biologist, and today I saw a new live bird, a chipping sparrow. And this is from Ken Kelman in Aptos. Lisa and I have been watching a white-backed chickadee who is using a nest box on our fence. And then Catherine Gorchoff, Natural History Field Quarter, 1976. I've been getting very close to bark, ants, grass, rocks, while I wander with my 2-year-old granddaughter while her parents work from home. Granddaughter time is restorative, and seeing the world through her new and wondering eyes brings me to real time and hope for the planet and for all of us. Thank you, guys. That was beautiful. And now I have the pleasure of introducing the next guest, Joe Jordan. He's going to tell us a little bit about Venus in our night sky. Joe was a graduate student in physical oceanography here at UCSC. For many years, he worked at the NASA Ames Research Center in Mountain View, where, among other projects, helped to fix the ozone hole. His focus now is on renewable solar and wind energy and teaches classes at San Jose State University and Cabrillo College. Since high school, his passion has always been astronomy. He was a frequent visitor to Ken Norris's classes, and everyone called him Cosmic Joe. We're really excited to have him join us tonight, so please welcome Cosmic Joe.
There we go. Thanks, everybody. Too much light now. Huh. I'm going to turn that back down. The light of the screen is doing it. Okay, well, yeah, I just went out, took a quick little break and checked, and sure enough, Venus is still up there. You can go out and see it right now if you want. It's not quite as high in the sky now as it was just a few weeks ago. It did get so high every evening that at the beginning of the night, it was a good 45 degrees up, halfway up from the horizon to the zenith point, the point straight over your head. Now it's more like 35 degrees. And how did I tell that? Well, short of having a protractor, well, I took 3 fist widths, 3 fist widths at arm's length, 3.5. 35 degrees. Each fist width, the long dimension of your fist width, is about 10 degrees held at arm's length. But the thing is hella bright. It's crazy, insane bright now, in case you hadn't noticed. I mean, unless you've been living under a rock or whatever, or spend all your time indoors zooming and on TV or whatever, you got to go out and you can see this bright, fat white dot high in the western sky. And here's the tip for you. It's going to be gone in a month. It's one of my favorite things is to have Venus as the evening quote unquote star. It's going to dive between us and the sun. It's going to go between us and the sun on June 3rd. And then it's going to pop up in our morning twilight sky as a so-called morning star. And it only disappears for about 8 days when it does that transition. On the other hand, when it goes around the far side of the sun, which it did until it came out from behind the far side of the sun this past October, it had been gone for 3 months. If you think about kind of the wedge of visibility, when it's nearer to us, it gets from one side of the sun pretty quick. But when it's way far away from us, it takes a long time to get from one side of the sun to the other to where we can see it without the sun being in the way. Does that make sense? It's kind of hard to, I just got to look at nodding heads maybe among the panelists here. But sorry, by the way, I'm looking pretty ghostly here, but ignore that man in front of the curtain. Just look at the damn rainbow. And by the way, here are the shadows. Maybe you can tell which person took the picture. It's the one whose head is right at the center of the circular arc defined by that beautiful rainbow up the north coast here during a recent shower. So let me see, I am going to turn this light on now because I had a few little notes just to make sure I don't forget some things. There we go. Maybe that's better. Okay. So the thing that's really interesting and strange is if you get some good binoculars or even a telescope and look at Venus tonight or any time for the next couple of weeks, you will see that it's a crescent. It's actually brightest when it is a thin crescent. So how can that be? Well, when it's a full Venus, it's way around on the far side of the sun. So it's tiny and far away. And, due to the inverse square law about light, it's relatively faint. When it comes around as it is now, getting ready to dive between us and the sun, well, it's about as close to us as it can get and us still see it without it being in front of the sun. So it's a big, close, bright crescent. Does that make sense? Only about 20% of the side of it that's facing us now is lit. Most of the sunlight shining on Venus is on the far side of Venus that we can't see. It's just like like the crescent moon, the day side of when we have a crescent moon, the day side of the moon is on the far side from us. But so it's a big, close, bright crescent. And it's bright enough, you can see it in broad daylight. Here's the really cool thing for field quarter types or natural history people. Look for it. You can see it by noon. And, I could easily show it to you with social distancing, of course. Could show it to you at 2 p.m., 3 p.m. It's roughly, well, maybe 3.5 fist widths away from the sun. And depending on the time of day that you're looking for it, along about 3 o'clock, it's pretty much straight over to the left of the sun. The sun and Venus are both kind of in the south at that time of day. So see if you can spot Venus in the broad daylight. It's like a star hanging in the bright blue sky. Well, let's see. So, and by the way, there are other planets. Nothing in the evening sky except Mercury is going to be joining Venus shortly. About 3 or 4 nights from now, you might be able to see Mercury, which is a planet that many people go their whole lives without ever having knowingly seen. It's the fleet, you know, the Quicksilver, the Winged Messenger, as in Holst's The Planets, the great musical piece. It only has an 88-day orbit around the sun, so it goes really fast. But it's going to join, it'll be right next to Venus, like a degree away from Venus on the night of two weeks from right now, the 21st. But you should be able to see it by about the 11th or 12th. It'll be down below Venus in the evening sky, and it'll be getting brighter and brighter from night to night. And then it's going to have this conjunction with Venus on the 21st. And then Venus will go on down and be gone, and Mercury will actually still be up for a little while. So that's something to look forward to. And by the way, if anybody wants more information on any of this stuff, feel free to get a hold of me. I don't know if Chris is going to post people's email addresses and things, or maybe that's already posted, but you're welcome to have mine if you keep those cards and letters coming, and keep an eye on the sky. That's what I would say. So, and by the way, let's talk a little bit about the natural history of Venus. It's pretty ugly. As the late, great Carl Sagan said, it's the closest thing in the solar system to hell. The temperature on the surface of Venus is about 900 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to melt lead. And that's because of a greenhouse effect, a natural greenhouse effect, out of control. And, you know, it's the carbon dioxide is the main greenhouse gas on Venus. Main greenhouse gas on the Earth, by the way, is actually water vapor. But it's a natural thing. Loading it up with too much carbon dioxide and other things is not so natural here. Well, let's see, what else? Oh, there's a couple of comets coming. There's a couple of comets coming. And actually, Chris has a couple of things. I guess this is a good cue. Chris and I developed a couple of visuals to show you. There's a wonderful resource, skyandtelescope.org. It's a great magazine, Sky and Telescope, but they have a website, skyandtelescope.org. And in just a second here, Chris is going to show you a couple little shots from that. Look at that. That's telling about the thing that's going to happen on the 21st. This is one example of many things that you can get, and they have stuff, you know, written text that tells you all about this. And then the next page there, Chris, the only other page I have, in the lower left, you can see that picture we just saw. But then, well, you know, they have a podcast there. And then one of my favorites is the thing in the upper right here, this week's Sky at a Glance. So you can go there, you know, on this website, skyandtelescope.org, find your way to that, and that'll tell you for every planet what's going on. And you can see in the upper left, there's an article about this comet, SWAN. SWAN is an acronym for a satellite, a space mission that was looking for weird stuff in the universe. That's not what the W stands for, but anyway, this comet is going to be starting to be visible in about a month from now. It's not going to be anything sensational, though, I don't think. However, there's another one after that that might. It's still too early to tell. The jury's still out. Oh, one other thing of interest about Venus, by the way, is it's cloudy. The reason it's so bright is it's completely cloudy. It's not mostly cloudy, it's completely cloudy all the time, all over the entirety of Venus. And those clouds are not water clouds like clouds we have here, or even we have on Earth some exotic nitric acid clouds, which are up in the polar regions and partly involved in the ozone destruction problem. No, the clouds on Venus are sulfuric acid, H2SO4. And they have a yellowish cast to them, and it's still a mystery of science why the clouds of Venus are yellowish. Nobody knows. I have this from the best authorities in the world, who I used to work with over at NASA Ames Research Center. And just so you don't mistake a star for Venus, there is one other pretty bright thing in the western and really more southern sky. You go out, like as soon as we're done here, you go out, you find Venus, but then look way over to the left of it, you'll see a brilliant blue-white diamond, and that is the brightest star in the whole sky, the dog star, Sirius. Yes, I'm serious. It's spelled S-I-R-I-U-S. That star is lined up with the 3 stars in a row in Orion's belt. However, Orion's belt and his nether parts below are pretty much set by this time of year, by this time of evening. But you can still see Sirius, and you can also see over to the right, between Sirius and Venus, you can see a brilliant red thing, a red star, and that is Betelgeuse, or Betelgeuse. That's the shoulder of Orion. And that star is so big it would swallow the entire inner solar system all the way out to Jupiter. Everything all the way out to Jupiter, the sun and Mercury and Venus and Earth and Mars, and all the way out to Jupiter, and the asteroid belt too, could all fit inside of Betelgeuse. So those are some other sites. Just don't, but you can't really miss Venus. You're not going to get confused. You go out there and boom, it's like a car driving out of the sky at you, except there's only one headlight. Well, okay, so let's see here. Just trying to see if there's anything I forgot. Gosh, I think well, planets. We got to think what the name planets means, okay? It comes from a Greek word meaning the wanderers, planeti. It was these bright lights that, unlike the stars, which kind of stayed fixed in these constellations, these things kind of went their own ways. And so, planeti, the planets, that's what they are. They're the wanderers. And well, so Jupiter, speaking of the planets, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars are all visible if you're a night owl, a real serious night owl, and you stay up or get up after midnight. Jupiter and Saturn are actually quite close. Jupiter's pretty bright, nothing like Venus, but it's pretty bright. Saturn will be a little bit to the east of Jupiter, and then Mars considerably farther to the east and kind of reddish. And you can watch how they do their dance over the next few months. And it's early morning stuff now, but as we move around the sun, all those planets are gonna come into our evening sky in coming months. So preview of coming attractions. Okay, well, I think that's about it, yeah.
There's at least one question here. I'll ask one question and then we'll need
John.
to up here. So can you say more about why it is a crescent and what's casting the shadow on it?
Oh, well, that thing that is not the crescent, it's a Cheshire cat grid. And right now it's going to be, if you look in binoculars or a telescope, you'll see a Cheshire cat grid. The part above it that would be the entire circle, that's not really a shadow. That's just the dark side of the moon. But if you think about it, why does a moon present a crescent? It's when it's sort of between us and the sun, but a little bit up off to the side, right? So you're seeing a little ways around onto the bright side of the moon. Most of the bright side of the moon is facing away from us, but we're seeing a little bit of that bright side sneaking around one edge. That's when you get a crescent. Same thing with Venus now, because it's between us, it's coming. It's not yet between us and the sun, but it's getting there. And so most of its sunlit side is on the far side of it. And we're just seeing that little smile does that make sense? I mean, if I could get some balls and some lights and things, we could play with it, but you can try visualizing it, use that right hemisphere of your brain, the visualization thing, and you'll probably get it figured out. And I'm always happy to try to help anybody who's still having trouble with it and puzzlement. Puzzlement is one of the greatest things in life. I'm puzzled all the time about this life in this universe. So hey, join the club and let's relax and enjoy it.
All right, thanks, Joe. I'm gonna
thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn it over to Frankie.
All right, thank you, Joe. So I'm just gonna say 3 more nature notes. Maggie, I'm in Tuscan, Arizona. When I walk the neighborhood, I map the prickly pear flowers to know where the flowers will be in a few months at jelly time. Clive, Bagshaw, West Side, Santa Cruz, near the lagoon. A pair of violet green swallows have just started bringing flowers to a nest box on our house. I have a video camera installed inside the box to watch them. Amazing. And then Jan from Albany, California. This morning at the Berkeley Marina, 3 fledgling white-tailed kites were being harassed by cows. Mama kite gave a warning cry from afar, and then the mockingbird mimicked her cry, and cows cleared out. Nature is the best medicine for the soul. And to that, I'll pass it to Joe.
You mean pass it to me?
I'll pass it to Chris.
All right. Wow, that was amazing. Thank you all for coming and sharing your observations and your appreciations. I'm sure we didn't get to all of them, and there were a lot of questions going on in the chat. I just really appreciate everybody interacting. Thanks for coming. This wraps up our symposium. I just want to thank all our presenters. Thanks to our production team. And most of all, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Now go out and look at Venus in the western sky. Just look to the west where the fading light of the sun is, and you'll see that really bright object up there. And look for an email from us or some post on our Facebook or our website. We'd love to get your feedback on this. This is really fun, and it's bringing in people from far away. So many of you, I just want to say hi. I wish I could talk with all of you. So many of you I know from so many places. It's wonderful to have you attend, and let's do it again. Be well, everybody. Stay in touch, and remember to take the time to get out there and experience the wonder and the beauty and the serenity of nature. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chris. Yay.